This episode of the WP Minute is brought to you by OmniSend. Do you sell stuff online? Then you need to meet OmniSend, the powerful yet refreshingly intuitive email and SMS tool that helps you make $73 for every dollar spent. OmniSend is that good and effective. You probably know the struggles of investing in digital ads with no guarantee it'll bring money back into your pocket. Use OmniSend and you won't have to find creative ways to make your audience notice you. You just talk straight to them. Use OmniSend pop-ups to build a contact list, then send campaigns directly to people who already want to hear from you. Automate everything with OmniSend. Just set it up once, sit back, and watch those sales roll in. If this sounds too good to be true, check it out at omnisend.com. Visit omnisend.com. Tell them thanks for sponsoring the WP Minute.
Hello, welcome to Whose WordPress Agency Is This Anyway? With the legendary Kurt Von Annen, the legend in the flesh, over
and
digital.
Toby Crines.
Thanks for joining us today. Let's jump in. We were talking with the OG of podcasting, Matt Medeiros, and he was asking this question because it was on one of his recent podcasts for the WP Minute. And the question is, are the days of hand-coding websites over?
Is it fair to say that I wish they were? It's not my forte. It's not my forte. But here's where I'm going to tell you it's not over. I do a lot. So my agency subcontracts for other larger agencies, and we also take direct referrals from like Lifter LMS and WP Tonic and places like that. I can't tell you how many times I get on a Zoom call with somebody and I'll say, oh, what theme are you using? Or, what was already, because they'll ask me to maintain something. And I'll be like, my website was custom coded by such and such, blah, 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 whatever, not from America. Mm-hmm. And it's a nightmare, the stuff that you get into. Like, you like, oh, they hard coded the classic editor. This will be fun,
Oh, yeah.
So it's not dead. It's not dead. I just wish it was.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. How do you feel?
I think it's perilous either way. Like I have every now and then I'm handed like an Elementor site and I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And then you do the update and the site goes blank.
Yeah. Similarly, we had a very small project come in the other day and they needed like a slideshow. And one of our developers was like, I'd rather just code it with ACF rather than, because I was like, use this plugin. He's like, no boss, I'm going to do it this way. I'm like, okay. And his way is better, I think, because what happened was, in hindsight, so he did it, and the client's like, great, can you also do this with it? And I was like, well, I'm glad we went with the developer's idea, because this makes it way easier.
Because now, because we know how, we can make it do all kinds of cool things. But then that steps into that other conversation, Toby, where everyone sees influencers on YouTube, and everyone sees AI, and everyone assumes that everything we do is with an easy button, and all you got to do is, right?
Right.
And so they see you make the slider, and then they, instead of having, squares with arrows in them, they want circles with umbrellas in them or something, right? They're like, well, we'd rather have circles with umbrellas in them. And then you go, okay, we can do that for you, right? And then it'll be this much more. And they're thinking, well, why would I have to pay more? You already built the slider. It should be an option. It should be,
right.
I should just tell AI that I want circles with umbrellas.
Yeah, exactly. And this kind of leads to another question that maybe will touch your fancy bone. I don't know. Hypothetically, let's say someone coded something in ChatGPT. They're a client of yours. Let's say they're a client of mine. Hypothetically coded a plugin in ChatGPT, and they said, "Here, Toby, I think it'll work. You make it work, and it should be easy."
Yeah.
How do you
all
respond?
You got to do is load up I asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT said, all you had to do was load up these files, and it should work.
Right.
Now, I'm not really sure how to do that myself, but I'm sure for you it's going to be easy.
Yeah. How do you respond to that?
My response is, believe it or not, I consider myself to be a pretty diplomatic person, Toby. So normally what I'll say is, I see this a lot. A lot of people are referring to AI to be this magic, easy button. If you really want to use this product that you've developed, we can try it. But to do that, I'm going to want to create a staging site. I'm going to want to try it in the staging site. And then we're going to have to basically run it, troubleshoot it, make sure there's no issues or glitches with it, make sure there's no conflicts with pre-existing plugins that are on the website and all those other things. And once we validate that, then we could load it up to the live website. So you're probably looking at about 7 or 8 hours. And at $150 an hour for agency time, that's going to run you, you know, what is that? $1,000. You know, are you a player at that? Are you a player at the it should be easy rate?
Right.
If the it should be easy rate doesn't work for you, you can always try it yourself or hire someone on Fiverr to give it a shot.
I think this is like one of those places where, especially like if you don't have an established company yet and you're like, I could see you getting pulled into that. I know like when I was getting started, like I got pulled into the this should be easy projects.
What do you got to do?
For low amounts of money.
Oh, you got it.
Because you know there are people, and this is part of like the trickiness of starting a business, really. Like it's like when you're starting, you just are saying yes to everything, and you're going to get people who don't want to spend any money on anything. And so you're in a position where you know, like they're going to go to Fiverr and pay someone what they think is $5 is going to end up being 500, and then this money they get, maybe you lose the client.
The part that is, so I've been public with this before. Like I used to work at Suzuki. I was in charge of all the publications and training at Suzuki, and that's motorcycles, automotive, marine. Like it's 3 huge divisions. It was a big company when I got the job, and the vice president in charge of my division, my department, it says he would come up to me all the time and he would say, well, we need to create this new module. We need to create this new e-learning thing. We need to create this new whatever. And I'd be like, okay, boss, okay. And I'd be taking notes and stuff. And then he would say, so all you need to do is, and as soon as that phrase came out of his mouth, I was like, we're doomed. We're doomed. This is going to be a 300-hour project, right? And I would just literally start like trying to figure out what the Gantt chart was going to look like for this project that I knew was going to morph into something giant. And that's when people come to me with these easy solutions for, you know, these AI easy solutions, that's where I start to go, okay, let's Gantt chart this sucker out and see what this is really going to cost. Because even the easy, all you should have to do is still takes time. And when you multiply that time against your rate, you go, well, this is how much it is. Because the numbers are the numbers.
There's another interesting thing about this AI doing your initial building, like you're not even prototyping, but like, hey, we're going to build an app with AI, and it's like our prototype, and then it's going to be our app. That like you have no idea how it was built, and you know when you go to add a feature later, you don't know that ChatGPT is or whatever you're using that it's going to know how to add a feature even.
No, and here's me not knowing what I'm talking about, right? Which I know is one of I'm just going to break one of Matt's rules right now. I'll say something about something I have no knowledge of. Somebody was just putting up on social last week about some tool that verifies whether content is AI written or not, because you can look at the code, like you copy the text and then you look at the code for the text. And within the code for the text is like this repetitive alphanumeric sequence that ChatGPT puts in so that it flags it as AI, right? And so I always wondered, how does Google know that was AI, right? Well, they know because there's some code in the text that's saying, hey, this 7-digit or 6-digit code pops up in every third paragraph. So we know this was AI derived. And so you have to ask yourself, if that were true, because again, I'm not the authority. I don't know if that's really true or not, but let's just assume that it is, because it sure does make a lot of sense. So if that was true, what would ChatGPT be embedding into your plugins or into the things that are going into your website? And then you don't really know what's in there. You don't know what ties they're going to make. You don't know if there's a feedback loop of data coming out of your website for something. Like ChatGPT's whole mission is to add more learning sources to its feed.
Right.
And so it's like, how much trust do you want to put in this thing? I was at an event yesterday with young people, and young people don't have, I shouldn't say it like the way it's coming out of my face. I should change the way I'm phrasing this. Young people don't seem to have any reference points for the things that make us giddy, right? But they also don't seem to have any knowledge about what it is that we're doing. And so that was a huge wake up call for me. I was hanging with a bunch of young people yesterday at a high school, and I was in charge of doing 3 separate presentations. Each was 20 minutes long. And I was supposed to like convey what having an agency was like, which aligns very well with this podcast. And I didn't realize it at first. And I don't know if I wrote this to you or not in the note. I didn't know how the students got assigned to the groups. I just thought they randomly got selected because there was like 50 businesses locally that volunteered for the day of sharing with these kids. And so I ended up with 3 classrooms, 15 to 20 kids in each class. So let's, round the number up and say there's 60 people I have access to for the day, right? And so they came in, their 20-minute session was like, boom, like I'm Kurt. This is what I've done. I've raced motorcycles. I've worked for Suzuki. I've worked for Ducati. That gets their eyes going, right? Like, okay, what does this guy do? And I run my own agency. And for like less than $1,000, you could start an agency, because WordPress runs 43% of the internet. It's open source and blah, blah, blah. So I have this presentation, right? The first class, I was like, show of hands, how many kids in here have heard the word WordPress before? And in the first class, nobody's hands went up. And I was like, wow, WordPress runs 43% of the internet and nobody in this room has ever heard the word before. And I thought, well, this is weird. Maybe the class just isn't participating. And I asked some other questions and they all participated. So it was like, it's not that they're afraid to participate. They really don't know that. Not a single one of them ever heard the term open source before. And they didn't know what open source meant. So I ended up having to explain that. And then, of course, as you can imagine, 20 minutes was up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't get a lot of chance for a lot of feedback and stuff. Now, what was cool about this, though, is after that session, a couple of kids came up and said, hey, how can I get in touch with you after this? Like, I'm interested in what you're talking about. I said, okay, well, that's cool. That's great. That worked. In the second session, I switched things up a little bit and turned out 2 kids heard of WordPress before. No one ever heard of open source. And I left more room for questions at the end. And there were some good questions, but it was pretty interesting. In the third session, I changed my delivery completely. I inverted the order of my presentation. And so I started with, hey, if I could show you a business that you could start up for less than $1,000 and show you how to make $6,000 with it before summer, would that be interesting? And they were like, yeah. I said, great, stay tuned because we're going to go through the rest of this and I'll get you that answer. And then they paid attention. But then one person in the room heard about WordPress and still nobody knew what open source was. And this was alarming to me because I assumed students would know more about the stuff. But Toby, here's what I don't think I shared with you. I asked my son who goes to the school, I said, hey, how'd your talks go? He said, oh, they went great. I said, how did you know what classes to go to? How did you know what groups to be? And he goes, oh, we picked them. And I said, hold on, you picked who you wanted to listen to? And he said, yeah, they gave us a list of everybody that was coming and we got to pick the classes we wanted to go to. And so I'm very optimistic because my classes were full.
Right.
My classes were full.
Yep.
And the kids picked the subject. But the kids have no idea what WordPress is or what open source is or how to even get started.
Right.
And so you and I are now running this podcast of whose WordPress agency is it anyway? And I'm talking to an entire audience of young people that have no idea what we do, which means in terms of the Stephen Covey process of always train your replacement, we haven't trained our replacements because they don't even know what we do.
We might not know the answer to this, but if you said build a website, would they know where to start? Do they know any of the Squarespace? Would they?
So they know the commercials for Wix and Squarespace, but they don't really have any experience with it. I started asking questions like, what does the school teach? Because one of the kids that knew what WordPress was said that Hutchinson Community College actually taught WordPress. And I was like, so what do they teach about WordPress? And they basically teach this is WordPress. You can go to WordPress.com. You can go to WordPress.org. You can install WordPress and you can use it to build websites. End of story, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, wow, and this is in a week when, at the risk of changing the channel again, did you see the post from Matt Mullenweg on X where he was asking for, does anyone know a good marketing solution for WordPress to get better known?
Oh, wow.
And so he's getting a lot of he's getting a lot of the normal Matt Mullenweg feedback on X about that, right? But that's a really great question for him to be asking as the head of WordPress. Here we are exposing ourselves from an agency perspective. Who propagates more websites, right? Agencies, right? So it's a one-to-many call rather than a one-to-one call. And then we have all these young people that don't even know what the product is.
Right. It makes me wonder, like, I don't know, like, if they asked, like, what percentage of our high school graduating classes went into web development? It's probably a very low percent, right? Like
a lot of them. So yeah, I asked some of these questions, like, so what are they teaching here? Well, they're teaching coding. Coding. Okay. What's coding? Like, what kind of coding are you guys talking about? You know, is it PHP? Are you in C++? What are you guys doing here? And then a lot of it comes down to, these are basic languages to stair step into something else later. And most of the kids are interested in gaming. So that ends up talking about like how to no code and low code these different gaming platforms, you know, as if they're all going to make a living someday with esports or something. But that leaves our whole segment of what like you and I do like up in the air.
Yeah. And it's the lack of any mention or any knowledge of open source. It seems like a fail of a civics education. Like,
I didn't hear the term open source until I was like 28 years old. And so I don't know how old we should have done some research before the show. I don't know how old the term is, right? But I didn't hear it until I was about 28 years old. And when I first heard it, I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean the stuff is free? You know, and I was like trying to like figure out like, so what's the business model there, right? Like, how does that work? And it was a confusing subject for me at that age. Now I understand things much, much better. But still, the idea that the schools aren't covering it all, like they're not even touching the subject, and they're leaving these kids with this, like, so the other thing was, have you ever seen the movie Rain Man?
Yeah, sure.
How much is a Snickers bar?
I don't remember that part.
$200,000, wasn't it? Or $50,000. It was right. Raymond was like, Snickers bar, $50,000.
Okay.
And this kid in the room said he wants to own an automotive dealership. He wants to own a car dealership. Okay, great. Like a new one? And he goes, yeah, you know, okay. How much money does that take? I asked him. He goes, about $100,000. And I'm like, for one of the cars, you know, one of those new trucks that you're going to put on the lot is $100,000. You know, I'm like, it's more like $10 million. You know, you have to be liquid. You have to be you have to display on paper that you could get $10 million so that you can leverage yourself to build a project of that size and magnitude. And he was like, oh, I had no idea, you know? And I'm thinking, shame on the school system for letting them get that far in the dream process without even understanding what's at play, right? Like just in basics. I asked a lot of kids, hey, if you could make $60,000 a year, do you think that would be good money? And half the room was like, yeah, it'd be all right. And I'm like, do you know what the average person makes in the United States? Do you know that you live in Hutchinson, Kansas, which is next to Wichita, Kansas? What's the average earnings in Wichita? What's the cost of living here compared to California or Portland or New York City? And they were like, oh, I really don't know. And I was like, you guys need to know this stuff because it's how you make your decisions. Like for me, when I think about agency life as a WordPress professional, going from the California economy to the Kansas economy changed our game completely because we lowered our overhead by 60%.
One thing that's promising about the 3 classrooms full of kids, it's the 3 classrooms full of kids who presumably were interested in web development of some sort. Is that?
They chose it, right? And so I really need to do more research because I want to find out, how did the school really present those talks to those kids? What was the buzzword that made 60 kids want to sit in a room that I was hosting? You know, what was because they don't know who I am, you know, unless they're really progressive and did like looked me up on the internet, Kurt Von Onen on their phone and went, oh, this guy's got 80 pages of Google references. He must be famous. You know, I'm not sure how they picked the rooms. So I'd kind of like to know that. But to your point, 60 kids signed up to hear about what we do for a living. That's exciting.
Yeah.
That's really exciting. The idea that they have no base knowledge in what we do is disappointing, especially for people that take IT classes at the high school. But I don't even know if I fault the high school for that, because who approached the high school and said, what does your curriculum look like? How come WordPress isn't included? How do we get WordPress included in your curriculum? And how do we show people how to leverage WordPress to make money as an agency owner? Because schools are really in the business of getting people ready to go to more school, not jump out of the school cycle and start your own business and make money.
Right.
See, I've opened up a whole can of worms here, Toby.
Yeah, and one thing that struck me as interesting, so you were in California, you had an agency in California, you come to Hutchinson. Couldn't you have kept your California rate? Or did you keep your California rates when you did that?
Yeah, of course I did, because our customers are from all over the globe. That's what I was trying to talk to the kids about. I was like, because I said, how many of you can't wait to get out of this small town when you get out of school, you know? And they're all like, I'm getting out of here, you know? It was like one of those old Tom Cruise movies about playing football in Pittsburgh, right? I got to get out of this town. And I'm like, so why do you think you need to leave this town? We have the fastest internet in the country and the lowest cost of living. This is the perfect place to put down roots and grow an agency.
Yeah, grow a digital agency.
Newsflash, I'm working with the city and with an organization here in town to start an apprenticeship program for kids that want to do an agency, right? But figure out, like, how does the college have a stake in that? How does the city have a stake in that? And the goal is, if we could convince more young people to stay here, and put down roots and grow a business, it adds to the tax base and all those positive things that, a community, any kind of civic thing needs.
Right.
So there's a lot going on in the background there. So I love doing the talk and I loved getting access to those kids, but it was really interesting to see, like, where are they at? Like, their interest level is here, their base knowledge is here, and their motivation is really somewhere in between. Like, what's the real motivation gauge for them to take what they learn and actually take action with it and become the owner, right? Because a lot of these kids are raised with employee attitudes, not with owner attitudes.
Yeah. I think I have this hypothesis. It's probably borne out in some data, or at least can be provable with existing data somewhere, or it disproved. But, like, the idea is, like, if you come from a family of entrepreneurs, you're going to be an entrepreneur. And if you come from a family of 9-to-5ers, you're probably going to be a 9-to-5er. And when I hear, like there's also, we could go a number of directions with how to train youth, and what, there's probably different opinions. Like, I would say, like, yeah, train them to be entrepreneurs. Like,
yeah.
And then add the context of, well, and then there's this other thing called full-time, and, you can fall back to that if you need to, but to fund your other thing.
Well, I think geofencing the idea has a certain merit, right? Because in California, I would be hard pressed to tell somebody, like, get out of school and start a business in California. It's not a friendly place to start a business. Just being real. I mean, I lived it, so I can tell you firsthand, it's not a friendly place to start a business. You have to say yes to every single deal that comes across your desk, and you have to work your pants off to try and make the rent payment, the $900 power payment. It's just huge to live there. Whereas here, your point, like, you could look at full-time, or you could do this kind of thing where you have ownership of it, right? And it could grow organically, and you could still make your minimum required funding to eke out your existence while it grows.
That's interesting. Like, let's say you're an agency that's a year or two old and you're struggling. Maybe you're in the wrong location.
Because you could pack up and go somewhere cheaper and make a go of it.
And the thing that I think, like, in hindsight, like, maybe the only quality that makes a business go is did you make it? Like, did you survive another year? You did? Great. That's all you had to do. Survive one more year, and then you'll be,
You know how they would say things like, if you make it more than 3 years, your chances of success. If you make it more than 5 years, your chances of success. And then I look at this, my agency started in 2008. And while I put a pause on it for corporate employment, I never fully shut it down. It was always kind of in the background, had a couple of things going at a time, trying to stay fresh, and then when I got laid off in 2020, sure, I looked for another job, but I also was like, I got to ramp this thing up. Like, this thing has to create revenue quickly or we're going to run out of money. And we were in California. So of course I had to ramp it up quicker. We're going to run out of money. And what I found out was my ability to ramp something up and generate revenue was a whole lot more positive than sending out resumes and hoping and praying, because it was at a period of time when there weren't a ton of jobs out there in my space. So I was really glad I had the ability to ramp up and do the things that I do.
Yeah, I think about that a lot because I have some friends that are looking for jobs right now. Very talented. One's a coder, one's marketer, and they're like senior level type of people, like in the organizations they've been in. And I look at them oftentimes, I'm like, just go freelance. You're investing 8 hours a day looking for jobs.
Just consult.
Go look for clients for 8 hours a day. You'll do well. Like, trust me, people like you.
I tell people this all the time. Like, when people say, what does your agency do? A lot of times I'll say, we help people launch their ideas. We help people launch their messages so that everybody can see it. And it sounds very simple when you say that, but every time I see somebody like looking on LinkedIn, I think to myself, oh my goodness, with that skill set and that background, you're 52 years old with 35 years of actionable experience. You should be a consultant for $300 an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should not be trying to get the next job for $42 an hour.
Yeah. Or go sell a project.
Yeah. Or to become somebody's, fractional CTO, fractional CMO, fractional, all these other things.
I think, like, what are some of the things that get in people's way? Let's call them, some of them are probably in their heads. Most are in their heads, I'm guessing, at least if you're in the United States. Like, let's say you're somebody with that experience. What's getting in your way?
Two things I hear: security and benefits. And I always go straight to security can't be the reason, because you're looking now. So how secure was the last thing?
Right.
So security's off the table. You don't get to talk about security. There's no security from corporate America any longer. You don't get your desk and then stay there for 30 years. That doesn't happen anymore. And so security's out the window. The other thing is benefits. And it's so weird. Toby, I had a really cool job in Albuquerque running an automotive center. And the benefits were costing us, and I'm guessing now because it was a long time ago, but let's say it was $865 a month to keep the family on the benefits package. When I knew I was going to leave that job, we had a young daughter, and I knew that my wife liked the pediatrician. And I knew that if I was going to leave this job, I had to keep that pediatrician, right? I had to keep some stability in the household. So I called the hospital directly and I said, hey, I'm going to leave this job, which means I'm going to lose these benefits, and I don't want to pay for that COBRA nonsense. So I need to know how much it would be if I wanted to self-support seeing the same people. And she said, well, where do you work now? What do you currently pay? And then she goes, oh, sweetie, you just need to go to our website, which is blah.org. And you'll see a list of our plans there. You're probably going to be a little upset when you see the plans. She goes, but you qualify for those and select the plan that you want and you'll be fine. Toby, the plans were like $400 a month. My employer was making $450 a month off of me, selling me medical insurance.
Yeah.
Like, who knows if the employer was making it or that was some kind of weird rate, but insurance is like this crazy thing where the rates change based on your employment status. And a lot of times when you're employed, you're just getting ripped off anyway.
Yeah. Well, the employer's selecting options.
Yeah.
And I only know this because I bought insurance. Usually my wife has insurance through her stuff, but this year she's like, my company isn't offering it. And so I went out there and got it. And it's one thing that was really interesting. So I went and bought it. And like, the options are really weird. It's hard to figure them out. But I ended up buying one that it wasn't that much more than the others, but it was like a little bit more. But it's like, I went to my first therapy session and he's like, I think you're going to get this for free. I'm like, what? like, no, I think it's free. And it's like, it has unlimited free therapy. Like, I'm like, okay. And like, I'm paying out of pocket. It's not, that would probably never be provided by an employer. It's too generous or something, but
it's too generous or something. Well, that's the thing that I keep going back to when someone says, when I go, you should be a consultant, or you should run your own agency, or you should, why are you fighting so hard to sell your talent to a boss when you could just run this thing and have some freedom that comes with it. And they'll go, well, it's the stability. Well, stability doesn't count anymore. It's the benefits. That doesn't really count anymore either. Like, what is it that really keeps you from it? And then it comes down to that imposter syndrome thing, right? Where it's like, well, I don't think I have the skills to run my own entity, you know? And I got news for you. Go out and create the revenue. If you hate bookkeeping, hire a bookkeeper. If you hate marketing, hire a marketer. If you hate talking to customers, hire a VA. Like, there's so many ways that you can incorporate yourself to really take advantage of something that, I think I'm emotionally unemployable now, Toby. Just listen to me. I'm crazy.
I know, I'm listening. I'm like, nobody's going to hire this guy except for some reason on a weird freelancing basis, like an agency basis, you know? Yeah. It's weird. You're right. Like, could you get maybe you are unemployable, but do you know how to sell projects that, create a living? Sure. And I wonder if that's it. Like, there's some like weird mental hurdle. I've seen lots of friends go through this where they're like, I'm going to go for it and do the agency thing, or not even agency is probably too strong a word, but consulting, and they can't figure it out. And I'm always like, what's so hard about this? Like, you got to sell. That's the whole job, basically.
A lot of people hate the selling part,
mm-hmm.
but they don't realize, for instance, my meeting last week with a local business wasn't me selling at all. They had hired somebody to make them a one-page website that was grossly overcharged and doesn't work. I mean, it literally doesn't work. You click on things, they don't go anywhere. I mean, it's just and when he called him and said, this website's not working right, the guy said, well, if you would have given me more money, it would have been a better website. And so, I didn't have to sell anything. This disgruntled client went to the Chamber of Commerce and said, oh my goodness, I'm between a rock and a hard space. I just paid this guy $2,500 for a website that doesn't work. I don't know what to do. And they said, well, have you talked to Kurt?
Yeah.
Like, it's just because it's the more you associate and network and meet people, the more the work just comes to you.
Yeah. And another story about how easy it can be to sell. Like, selling is not always what you see in the movies. Like, I got a call, let's say a month and a half ago, from a guy. He called at like 7:30 a.m. I called him back at like 8:01 a.m. And turns out it's, he's like, I need a website, da-da-da-da. And I'm talking to him, and on the phone, on that call, without me really doing any pitching, he gave me his credit card, took thousands of dollars, he paid me thousands of dollars on that call, never met him before. He's ready to pay, like, you just got to be there when they're ready half the time.
Well, but you did the thing that you did was you called him back.
Yeah, no, that's what he said. I talked to him today. He's like, oh, I'm sure glad that you called me back. Otherwise, who knows where I'd be.
Yeah. Because I talk to other customers all the time. And one of the things so Mañana No Mas was born out of this weird scenario, right? And that's why we have the name we have. But Mañana No Mas, like, we get it done. We get it done. And customers aren't used to it. They're not used to like, oh, there was a date on the calendar and that date's coming and the job's done. Or you didn't ask me for more money. Like, that's so weird. Most every time we've contracted with someone before, they've always come back and asked for more money. And it's like, no, like, I did the needs assessment. I knew what it was going to cost to get it done, and I knew how long it would take. All I did was do what I said I would do.
Yeah.
But because I did what I said I would do, they referred me to 3 more people at higher paying gigs.
Yeah. You know what else? I was thinking there's a fear. I was reading this today. Like, there's a mental blocker that applies here. And it's like, people are afraid to like tell people that they're freelancing or consulting. Yeah. Like, let's say on your Facebook page, you're like, I can't post that. Everybody else is posting baby photos and food photos or whatever.
Yeah.
And the gist of the article was like, no, post it, own it, just lean in. You're now looking for work. Here's what you do. Like, yeah, you're going to lose some Facebook friends, but so what?
If you run into somebody on the street at the grocery store who tells you some horrific story about how they just had to hire a stranger to do something that you do because they thought you worked somewhere else and that you were unavailable.
Right.
And then they tell you the project's going horribly and they're getting overcharged and it's behind schedule. And in your mind, you're hearing all this and you're like, why didn't they hire me? They didn't hire you because they didn't know you were available.
Right.
So shame on you. Shame on you. They're having a horrible experience and you're not making any money. Right. And so it's the worst scenario that could possibly happen. I agree with you 100%. When people, people in town meet me at like a Sandhills Brewery where Pippin Williamson owns that place, right? So if anyone knows Pippin, shout out to Pippin. I go down to Sandhills and people say, oh, hey, are you on Facebook? And they start looking, like, follow me on Facebook. And I just tell them straight up, I go, I post a lot of content. If you don't want to be my friend, that's okay. That's okay, because I still post all my stuff on there.
Uh-huh.
You know?
Yeah. You know what would be fun as we close out here? We're about out of time. Let's hypothetically say we have a listener or two with a story about how they sold something. Maybe it was easy, maybe it was hard. I would love to hear that story.
I would too, especially ones that get like, that just seem to go a pathway off.
Mm-hmm.
Right when you think nothing's going to happen, and all of a sudden, bam, it happens.
Yeah.
It's usually the happiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Before we get off the call, what was one that surprised you? One where you entered a conversation, and next thing you know, you were like, where'd all this money come from?
Yeah. Okay, here's an example. It happened recently. I get a phone call from a client that probably pays me $300 a year for hosting or, whatever. And they're like, I need a website. I needed it done yesterday. No. What happened was another person on their team called me a month ago and was like, yeah, we're thinking about building a website. And I sent them a contract, was like, here it is. If you want it, let's do it. A month and a half later, the owner calls me. He's like, I don't know what happened there. Where's the contract that I can sign? So I sent it to him, he signed it. And I'm sure he paid me that day or the next day or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. That is good stuff. I have a couple of books published, and every now and then, doesn't happen often, I wish it did. Every now and then, someone out of the blue will call and say, are you the author that wrote this book? And I'll say, yes. And then they'll say, well, we want to hire you for X, Y, and Z. And it comes out of nowhere. And
wow.
And then sometimes I say, okay, well, based on that short conversation, just to be clear, you want this bullet, this bullet, this bullet, this bullet. And then I've learned over time, I don't give them a price. I say, my guess is you're not the person with the budget for this project. I just want to let you know that I can take care of all the bullets we just discussed, but I need you to get back to me and let me know what your budget is for that project. And it's always more than I would ask for.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah, that's
Great
become
point.
one of my sales tools. It's like, I'm not going to give you the number. I need to know what your budget is for this.
Uh-huh.
And usually the work equals the budget. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying I get away like making millions of dollars, but there's always something you didn't foresee, right?
Yeah.
There's something in the communication that doesn't come through. So if you're thinking, oh, this is worth $6,000, and they say, well, we've got $12,000 for this, take the $12,000
Right.
because something's going to happen as you roll that out, where they're going to be like, oh, we thought this was going to be automated. And you're like, oh, crap.
Also,
Run the ChatGPT and write a plugin for that.
I would probably add semi-begrudgingly take the 12,000. I guess I can do it for you because you're such a good client.
I always go like this. Hold on, I got to see if I can pull it off. Ready?
That's great.
Well, the good news is, for 12,000, I'm pretty sure we can check off all of those bullet points on your needs assessment.
Love it. And on that note, this has been an episode of Whose WordPress Agency Is This Anyway? With Kurt Van Anen. I'm Toby Crines. We'll talk to you next week.
Have a good one.
Thanks for listening to the WP Minute. This episode is brought to you by our amazing pillar sponsors, Pressable, OmniSend, Bluehost, and Kinsta. Without their support and the support from our WP Minute Slack members, this content wouldn't be possible. Thanks to our Foundation Plus sponsors, Hostinger, Big Scoots, Themile, Optimal, PatchStack, Weglot, Personalized WP, Deploy HQ, and WP World. Their recognition to help support independent WordPress media keeps the lights on. Want to support the WP Minute through sponsorship or joining our members-only Slack? Visit WPMinute.com/support.